Oh, see, I wouldn't lie to you about a thing like that. All right. So again, welcome everybody. I really don't have a whole lot to report here today. So we're going to get started pretty soon here, and I'm going to be continuing to let folks in as they come in. We were, hope you all had a good time, even though we had pretty. It wasn't the best game that we have ever played, but we were playing the number 8 team in the country, so there is that. And I have had the one issue I have had for the meetings is I have just been unable to even get any of the media reps from our opponents to even answer an email. I don't know what has gone out. So we don't have anybody to talk about USC.
Yay!
Yeah, there is that. So this is going to be pretty quick, and just quite frankly, just my own fault. I've been so swamped this week. I was unable to get the time to have anybody come in to talk about what's going on in the athletic department. So we won't have a report there either. But what that does do is it gives us more time to with Joe, and which is really what we want. So this weekend is USC. Patty, I'm waiting for a comment.
No comment.
Sucks.
No. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
John Lederer is going. It's his 35th USC game.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we stopped going in 2010 down there. So anyway.
You should go. Maybe the last time we'll play there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that.
Tell him to ask Lendell White what he did with the $150,000 he found in his apartment.
Who was that?
Lendell White said the other day that they didn't pay us. I just found $150,000 in my apartment when I moved
that's
in.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Is
that's
that
The University of Scandal Central.
yeah. It's always good when you reach into a pocket and find that kind of money in an old coat, So
Is that what you
anyway,
have to buy tickets for the lottery?
what was that?
Is that the money you have to buy tickets for the lottery?
Right. Well, it kind of would be the lottery for me.
Well, but it's not 1.2 billion.
All right. So anyways, 7:30, we will have kind of an unofficial watch party. Everybody usually gathers over at Clubhouse 56. If anybody would like to host any of the watch parties, please let me know. Let's see. So what do we have coming up? Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce some folks that are here with us today. Susie Cohen-Crumpler. Susie is the executive director at CAA, and I'm glad to see her here. Susie, I know that you didn't really prepare anything, but would you like to say a few words to the group?
Thanks so much, Gary. Greetings, everyone. I'm Susie Cohen-Crumpler, the executive director at the Cal Alumni Association. Began in this role in January, which I keep saying just began, but now I don't know what happened to October. It's already November and we're heading toward the end of the year. So I'll be finishing out a year, and it's been wonderful meeting alumni across the country and at home here in Northern California, Southern California, etc. Thank you to all the Sac Bears and everything that you do to support Cal and CAA, and coming together with your energy and spirit. It's wonderful to see all of you here tonight.
Yeah, I saw everything. Nothing too much exciting going on.
I love the secrets that we hear when people are not muted, especially the whispering. But anyway, it's great to see all of you. I'm hoping that we'll have a win this weekend. We will, right? So go Bears. And of course, if you're on campus, would love to see you. And I hope to get to Sacramento soon.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
That in the past, the Alumni House has hosted tailgate parties for the basketball games. Do you plan on doing it this season?
We are not running our hoops parties in for the 2022-23 season. And I know this is disappointing to some. And Gary, you assured me we would only have easy questions, but I don't mind taking any questions. I prefer to address it and talk to all through a transparent lens. And so I think what happened during COVID was we began to have these hoops parties virtually. And we have been preparing our scope of work, our budget, et cetera, for the 2023 year. And one of the things that we look at is how many alumni we engage and how we can continue to operate programs based on our current staff, et cetera. So this particular year, we won't be offering these hoops parties in person. And I really apologize to those who have been coming for so many years. Dedicated fans who come to Alumni House to really enjoy listening to the coaches and coming together in spirit and then joining each other for the game on campus. So we're working on opportunities to continue to engage, but we don't have the in-person parties scheduled for this year, unfortunately, and primarily due to some of our budget restrictions and some of the ways that we've had to prioritize. Not the popular answer, but any further question on that?
So to me, and I enjoy going to them. I look forward to them. I know COVID had a big impact. So is it primarily financial then that you're not covering the cost of hosting them? Because
well,
a little more to do it. I mean, if it's more logistics where you're trying to get coaches and maybe staffing, that's different. But financially, just guessing, I would think you'd make money. You should be able to make money on
we don't actually bring in any net from those events. And I agree, they're really nice. And I love going to them and seeing everyone. So we've had during COVID, of course, we had some, wow, Gary, this is turning into a Susie show, but I'll try to be brief. But we did have some challenges during COVID.
that I can understand.
No, as you know, we rely on some of our revenue generating programs to offset some of our mission driven programs. So, we run our Lair of the Bear summer camp and we had to shut that down for a year. And then we came back at a lower capacity and we're trying to build that back up. Of course, our travel program also, as you can imagine, that kind of decreased during COVID, and thankfully that's coming back. And so I think, to be honest, Richard, really is due to financial priorities and having the staff and resources to run the event. We would break about even financially, but that didn't, that we weren't taking into account the indirect costs of, having a staff person dedicated, et cetera. So, I'd really like to look at options for the future because I think that Cal spirit around athletics is so important, and I want alumni to feel engaged. So trying to figure out how we can bring some of these events back.
Yeah, and it's like right next door to Haas Pavilion. So it's like, go there and enjoy it with other Cal fans and just, walk to Haas Pavilion. So it's a great location. And
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, right outside my office window, I hear them, lining up and the excitement. So I hear you and I agree with you. And I wish we could do everything. And so we're still assessing for, how we, we're kind of slowly coming back or as quickly as we can after COVID, and making some hard decisions around programming. And so this kind of input, and I'm sure it's not just you, but many people on this call, this Zoom, who share your thoughts. And so thank you.
And maybe just one more question, as I'm actually going to the USC game because my son lives down there and it may be the last time. And I know they're charging like $110 for the tailgate event there. And now CAA is somewhat involved, but it's primarily the Southern California chapters that are doing it?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've done, and we're sort of shifting more to this model of having some of our chapters in the different areas of the state and country where we have games to help us kind of coordinate these tailgate events. Because it's not just basketball, it's also football. And we're sort of in the same situation for those away game tailgates that we used to host. And so the LA chapter, I believe, and they may be coordinating with another group down there as well, but they are putting on that tailgate. So are you saying that the price is unusually high for entrance to that?
It's 110 and I don't know, I think the Notre Dame, I didn't go to Notre Dame, but some people here did, and may have been, going there, big expense, but once in a lifetime to go there. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I know, I know I've been in nonprofits for well over 40 years and the expenses for these types of events are surprisingly high. So, and with the costs that are around today, it gets very expensive to put them on. So
It does. And I think what we've tried to do is partner as much as possible with athletics, with our chapters, so that we can sort of share in that expense and still provide these offerings for alumni who really want to get together in the spirit of the games. And I think, that makes total sense. I want to keep doing that as much as possible. But like Gary said, there is a cost to that. So we have to figure out how to offset that and still sort of, figure out how to balance over here. And as you all know, the Alumni Association, while very integrated with the university, we're an independent 501c3 organization. And so we have to sustain ourselves financially. And it's tricky when our revenue sources were impacted by COVID, and we're building that back up. But again, your feedback's really important to me. And if there's anything specific, so are you going to the USC tailgate?
Well, I've done in the past because my son lives down there.
Oh, nice.
There's a Ralph's tailgate that what happens is you buy they have it for both USC and UCLA, all their games, most of them, I guess. And if you spend $35 on select items, you get to go to theirs. I mean, certainly you're not with mostly Cal fans, but it's relatively inexpensive because you're buying food, maybe a little overpriced, but for $35, and then you have something. And I like to spend a little more and go to the Cal one, but 110 just seems a little high. And I can appreciate there's cost because you're having to rent a facility there, and maybe the chapters down there are trying to make a little money, which you can't begrudge them.
So we need to actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to kind of get moving on here. Susie, thank you so much for.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to
So I
see
just
you.
want to mention that our next meeting is on November 9th, a week from tonight, and we're going to have Tyler Bridges, whose book, 5 Laterals and a Trombone, just was released. It is available now. And joining Tyler will, of course, be Gary Terrell and Kevin Moan. Actually, I should say Kevin Moan and Gary Terrell. Let's put them in the right order here. So next week's meeting, and I'll put a link to that registration in the next email that goes out. And then, of course, our last meeting will be November 16th with Dave Lambros, and that's going to be an in-person meeting. I'm having some challenges getting an appropriate venue for it, but I hope to have that settled in the next couple of days, so that information will go out. All right, so guess who you came here to talk to and hear from? I started at Cal in 1974, and somebody I couldn't even tell you who was the announcer for football on KGO. And, but that was only for a year, because right after that, Joe Starkey began calling the games, and he has been there ever since. You know, as we're happy for Joe on his retirement, we're all going to miss him very much on Saturdays on KGO. So I'm glad that we have him to ourselves tonight. So I don't need to introduce it. Everybody knows who Joe is, and I can tell because by the great turnout that we have here tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce. I'm so glad he's here. He was able to free up his schedule enough to be with us tonight. So I'd like to introduce a man who needs absolutely no introduction, Joe Starkey.
Yay.
Joe, you're on mute. You there? Okay, I saw him come on. Let me give him a call because he may be away. I was supposed to call him, but I saw he came on. So let me give him a quick call here.
Okay, well, Gary is trying to reach Joe. Just wanted to let anybody know if you subscribe to or have access to The Athletic, which is an online.
Hi, Joe. How are
sports
you? Okay, yeah, because I show you is muted and camera off. No, not yet. Okay.
Mute. How about now?
Okay, now I can hear you.
There you go.
The camera on?
As far as I know.
Well, we hear you, but can't see you.
All right, try it again.
Right.
Let's see here.
No, not yet.
No?
I think you'll probably hear a big roar when we can see you.
Ah. Let's see what else I could possibly do here. Start video.
Oh,
Oh,
Video.
there you go.
There we go.
All right. All right. Well, I'll see you on camera.
Okay.
Hi, Joe.
Good evening.
Yay.
Joe, I didn't
Go
realize
Bears.
you weren't on, so I gave you a hearty introduction there. So the floor is yours.
Okay, well, listen, it's certainly nice to be with you. And of course, we have one of our annual adventures this week with USC. And by the way, just as a little subtext to this, from many people that I know in Southern California.
He's the Cal Bears broadcaster.
There is a large contingent of people, both at USC and UCLA, that are saying, what in God's name are you doing trying to leave the West Coast football? And so it's a pretty hot subject down there. And of course, with USC, because it's a private school, they can do whatever they want. There's no way to stop them. But after, you might have heard that Bill Walton today went crazy over the whole idea that UCLA would leave. And so who knows, maybe that part of it isn't over yet.
So, Joe, I know we had one question that I got earlier today from Patty. How did you get started at broadcasting for Cal?
Well, I guess it's probably not the usual story. I've got an MBA from Loyola University in Chicago. I lived in Chicago, and I was in the National Guard in the infamous year when Martin Luther King got shot, and there were riots in Chicago. There were riots during the Democratic Convention, all of which I was carrying an M1 rifle in my own city. We just had the worst winter we'd ever had in Chicago. And although my whole family was from there, I just had it in my head, I wanted to get out of here, try something new for a while. So I got hired by, of all people, Mattel Toys to be a corporate recruiter. And interestingly enough, by the way, when they came in to interview me, after I sent them a resume, they said, why do you want to come to California and work for Mattel? And I started laughing because I said, how many guys have ever interviewed for a job with you in combat fatigues with an M1 rifle? I think that sort of sums up why I want to get out to the West Coast.
All right. So, actually, I got a question already. So, Dave was asking, in all your years of Cal broadcasting, how has the catered food been, and which broadcast booth has been the best?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, even at Berkeley, it's kind of gone in different ways over the years. There have been some years when I guess when everybody was doing very well and we were going to bowl games and all that, I thought that the food in the press box got elevated pretty good, but not so much at this point. However, if you're lucky enough to be somebody who pays enough to be a Cal backer and get to the 8th floor, you're going to live well because they do a heck of a job up on the top floor for the big backers for Cal football.
So do you get to partake in that food regularly, or?
Well, yeah, I've got a full access pass and I definitely use it.
Okay, cool. So just, I think everybody here would just like to know, Joe, some of your some of the stories about what's happened in the booth over these last 40, I don't even want to do the math, years. And, and did you know right away that this was going to be a really long-term gig?
No, there's no way to assume that, particularly when I started out young. In fact, by the time I got the Cal job, I'd already had a couple of different ones. For example, my first job ever in professional sports as a broadcaster was with the California Seals Hockey Club. I got that in 1972, and that was directly out of my position as a bank vice president for Union Bank. I had made a bunch of tapes. Well, at that point, I had been living in Los Angeles. Was at Union Bank's headquarters is in Los Angeles, and so I would go to the Forum and other places down there and just tape the Lakers or the Kings or anything else that came along. The ABA, for example, existed then in basketball, so the sports arena next to USC always had a pro team as well. So I taped and taped and taped, and when I thought they were good enough, I started sending them out. And amazingly, the timing was good because the Seals announcer, by a guy by the name of Roy Story, he quit to take a job with the LA Kings. And when I heard the job was open, I went and actually created an interview with Charlie Finley in Chicago, my hometown. And I played him the tape, and he hired me right on the spot to do the Seals hockey games, which just stunned the heck out of me. But it didn't last because 5 minutes later, he fired me. The story is that because of my background, is that I was involved in the corporate side of business, and I was involved in hiring and firing at every place I'd been as a recruiter and all. And so I made what I thought was a very innocent comment. I said, Charlie, you have a reputation of going through a lot of people, that you've had a lot of turnover with your teams, the A's and the Seals. I said, I'd like to help in that regard because that's my background. Well, he felt I was insulting him, so he fired me on the spot. So I had the job for about 5 minutes. But then I wasn't about to give up. I went to the station that had the rights in those days, KEEN, San Jose, a station numbers that don't exist anymore. And I played them the tape, and they hired me. And then I told them the story of my visit with Mr. Finley. They said, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of that. So I went ahead and quit the bank. And the World Series was just beginning in Oakland with the A's. And so the owner or the manager of the radio station sat down with Finley in his box and said, I know we need a hockey announcer. This is the guy I want to hire. And Finley listens to the tape. And in a few minutes, he says, the guy looks like he could probably do it. But he said, I've heard that voice somewhere before. He said, why do I know that guy? And he stood up apparently and basically screamed in the ear of the station manager and said, is that bleeping Blakeman banker who wants a job? You got to be kidding. Well, he said, okay, hire him anyhow. So there you go.
Well, we've got a lot of questions in chat, but I'm going to ask you one more before we go into those. In order to ask this question, we have to disqualify one certain play that happened around 40 years ago, the big game. But yeah, so outside of the play, which is, the play, I mean, what more can you say about it? What was your most memorable, what was the most memorable play that I was going to say remember, so that would be memorable.
Well, yeah, really, in 48 years, there's a lot more than one. But if we start at the beginning, the most fascinating game I ever saw That was just, excuse me, was just sort of duplicated this week with the 49ers. And that was the fact that Christian McCaffrey had this big game Sunday. And in 1975, my first year with Cal, we had a running back by the name of Chuck Muncie. And Muncie against Stanford in my first ever Cal Stanford game, threw a touchdown, caught a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. That happens very rarely. And that team was awesome. Mike White had an incredible lineup. You had Joe Roth at quarterback. You had Wesley Walker as receiver, Teddy Albrecht on the offensive line. The list of players went a long way. That was one of the great Cal teams, and sadly did not get to the Rose Bowl because they lost to UCLA during the regular season.
Boy, I remember that. I remember that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to some of the questions in chat. First one from Richard. A simple question with probably a lot of answer. What's up with KGO?
Breaks my heart and breaks the heart of everybody who ever worked there. For example, I was sports director there for 25 years. And in those 25 years, not once, and they do ratings 4 times a year, not once in my 25 years, and certainly all not because of me, they were never not the #1 rated radio station in Northern California. We won national awards. We won West Coast awards. Half the staff was getting awards for their news reports or whatever. And yet, nonetheless, it's a different era. So to be fair to the new owners, it is not the same world that it was then for those kind of talk show radio programs. But nonetheless, it's really sad that it came and had to go to this route to survive.
Speaking of your days at KGO, somebody that registered to be here but is unable to be here tonight asked me to say hello. One of your old colleagues, Greg Fishman.
Oh, of course, absolutely,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so he wanted me to say hello. He wished he could have been here tonight. Okay, so Dave is asking, in all your years of Cal broadcasting, how is the K? Oh, I already asked that one. Sorry. Okay. Greg wants to know, Joe, what was your favorite Cal road trip?
Ironically, in just the very second year that I was doing Cal football, at the same time I was doing hockey at that point and football, but we had a great road trip with Mike White. We went to Oklahoma, Georgia, and Arizona State on the same road trip. And at that time, Arizona State wasn't in the conference. And so the chance to go to those 3 locations when Oklahoma was at its very peak is a great program. Georgia was such a beautiful campus, and a year later, the guy is now running for Congress and hopefully will lose by the name of Wesley. You know who that is. Okay, so that was one of the great road trips. So 3 straight games and in 3 big time programs. I really enjoyed that. And over the years, there's been a lot of them. I mean, the opportunity, for example, to go to so many interesting places is just incredible. I love the games when we played in Miami. I love playing in the South, almost anywhere, Southeast Conference, because there's such a rah-rah atmosphere. You know, we played Tennessee, for example, down there. So we've had a lot of games, particularly in the South, that are really interesting, and I enjoy that a lot. And as a Midwesterner, of course, the idea that I could go to Illinois and Northwestern near my hometown of Chicago, those were always special too.
Okay. Another question from Richard. It's kind of an unusual one. I'm not sure where this one's coming from. Did you used to moonlight at the KJ wine tasting room?
Definitely not. Yeah, in fact, I've almost never, I'll drink wine on very rare occasions. I'm really not even, I very rarely ever drink liquor, so I wouldn't be working in a winery.
All right. So Brian has a question here that it's a good one. If the decision was yours, who would you hire to replace you?
Oh boy. Well, it's almost impossible because I don't know who really wants it at this point. Who's interested? For example, I told Todd McKim when I first made the decision to leave, I said, if you want the job, I will support you 100%. But Todd said he doesn't. He has moved back up to Oregon. And so he's not interested in that. but there, let's face it, there are decades worth of announcers on the West Coast and elsewhere that will certainly be delighted for the opportunity. And I believe that whoever comes in next will go back to the way it was 15, 20 years ago when you would do football and basketball as the lead man. And that's what I did when I first started at Cal.
All right. Okay. And Lisa would like to know, do you have a favorite season that you broadcasted, except the year of the play?
I would say the year with Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was probably the most accurate quarterback that I can ever remember at Cal. We had a great team. It had obviously great running backs. Marshawn Lynch was on that team. We had great depth, great talent. That team should have gone to the Rose Bowl and basically got cheated out of it by some politics, right? But that team was so much fun to watch because you felt they were never out of it, because you always thought that Rodgers would find a way to get back in it. And then to finish his career with a phenomenal game in Arizona in a bowl game when we won 52, I think 52 to 49 or 52 to 50. It was an amazing sight. I really enjoyed that whole season.
Okay. Let's see. Next one in chat. Elizabeth would like to know, what memories do you have of Joe Cap?
Joe Cap lives and dies Cal. He's everything that Berkeley stands for. And I think that's what makes him so beloved, really, by alums and fans of Cal, because they know that everything he does is based on the idea, I want to help my school. The bear will not quit. The bear will not die. All the comments he came up with, all those things. He just bleeds blue and gold. He took the head coaching job, even though I got a hunch, maybe even himself, he wasn't convinced that he should be a coach, but he wanted the opportunity. And so I think he's been around the program for so long. He's so involved in it. He was on the basketball team that won a championship. He could write his own personal history of all the things he did as part of Cal.
So I'm going to ask a question from Joe here, but I'm going to preface it a little bit. When we are at the games, in Memorial Stadium as a fan, as a spectator, the longest, without question, the longest 2 to 3 minutes on the face of the earth is a media timeout. Excuse me. Joe wants to know, what are you typically doing during the interminably long commercial breaks?
Actually, we kind of get caught up. What I'll do is the home games, one of my sons is a statistician. And so usually at a break, that's an opportunity to kind of get updated on who's leading the team in receptions, how's the running game going, how's this breaking down in terms of yardage and ball control. So there's a lot of questions that have to do with just the flow of the game that you use when you get a commercial break.
All right, and Patty would like to know, do you have season tickets so you can join fans in the stands and not have to work?
Yes, I do. Hopefully they will honor them for the future. They've been nice enough to take care of me and my family throughout the years. And so hopefully that will continue.
All right. And I think this is kind of where Pinky raised her hand in the process here. So Pinky, you have a question? You have to unmute. You're still muted, Pinky.
Yeah, I can't hear her.
Yeah. Pinky, I think maybe if you could put it into chat because we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Now we got you.
Now.
Okay.
Okay, are you finding more or less interest in college football as far as broadcasting interest?
No, I really, I worked in the NFL for 24 years, 22 of those with the 49ers, loved the game, but I don't think anything matches the rah-rah atmosphere around a college game. You got the bands on the field, you got the fans are involved in a college game far more than they are in a pro game because they have that self-identification. It's their school. Therefore, you have an extra level, perhaps, of interest in the product. And so I think college football continues to be an incredibly joyous event. Let's hope it continues.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up to that.
Thank you.
when you were broadcasting both the Bears and the 49ers, and you decided that was more than you wanted to do, both of them, how tough was the decision, or how easy was the decision to not broadcast the 49ers and just do Cal?
Well, the bottom line for any of us who have done that through the years, and there's probably 6 or 7 guys that I've known through the years who also did 2 teams, is that, for example, Larry Zimmer did the Broncos and did Colorado. The ultimate decision always comes down to how much longer can I do this? So which team or which league is more logical to stay with? And so really it was a pretty simple decision that I could broadcast college football with its a lighter schedule, less travel, all those kind of things for a much longer time than I would be able to do an NFL team. I would doubt very much that the 49ers would have me still working this long at the NFL level.
And see, Richard has another question. From your standpoint, what does our football team, what does Cal need to do to be more successful?
One of the things that I hear, and obviously I'm not an alum, but I'm very close to the school, is there is an attitude, fairly or unfairly, that says the school doesn't go out of its way to get football players into the school. I think that has reverberated down through the years. There always comes a time in every head coach, except Joe Cap, because he knows the history here, that they say, why is it so tough for me to be able to bring players onto this campus? Why are we so overly controlled by, oh, well, his GPA was 2.7 instead of 2.9, things like that. That has been a recurring problem through the years. This is one of the great universities on the planet, but there should be some room to let the players in that you might think is a little fringy, but so what? I mean, we know many players that got in that you would think, well, he's just not going to make it, but they did, because they have tutors available, they have the desire to learn. And I do think that there have been some things that have been minor roadblocks through the years that have affected the ability to get everybody into the program that you might like to get in.
Yeah, when you were saying that, Joe, one of the ones that came to mind, of course, is Russell White. He was, a very marginal.
Exactly. There's a perfect example, right? He turned out to be a fine student and went on to good things.
Exactly. Let's see, I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. Oh, so Dave would like to know, in all your years, how many times have you had laryngitis? I remember one in BYU in Provo.
Probably my worst example of that was in 2008, which was my last year with the 49ers, where I simply lost my voice. At that time, Marshawn Lynch, by the way, was playing for Buffalo. And we had gone up to I knew I was in trouble already, because I had this sense that my voice wasn't working the way it should. And so when we got to a Buffalo game in fact, it was over Thanksgiving weekend, I actually couldn't even do the broadcast. My voice was so completely shot that I couldn't get through it. And so the following week, for the only time ever, I had to not do a game just because of a health problem where I couldn't talk. And that was where Todd had to come in and replace me for a game. So it's not been a big picture issue over the years, but I don't think I'm the only guy that's ever had sometime that you had to miss a game because the voice wasn't behaving.
All right, great. Thank you. My friend Steve Swat would like to know, I'm sure all of us have our favorites, but since 1975, who would you consider to be the greatest Golden Bear football player?
Oh boy, that's almost not fair. Yeah, it's hard to view them on a one-on-one basis. You almost have to go by positions, like who was the best defensive end, who was the best quarterback, who's the best running back. And there's so many that I think are similarly talented that I'm going to be a politician and say, no, I'm not going to pick one. Sorry.
We usually don't allow that, but Joe, what can we say? All right. Let's see. And we have a question another question from Richard. What is your opinion of the current state of college football and where do you see it going?
Downhill, I'm very concerned, very concerned. For example, USC, believe it or not, has 22, let me see if I got this right, 24 players from somewhere else that have all come in 1 year to USC, just basically being bought to come and play for USC. And they're obviously not the only villain, because now it's going on all over the country. Maybe I'm just too self-righteous or old-fashioned about what college football should be, but I disagree 100% that you have to pay the players to play college football. At any major school in the country, they're getting a scholarship that can be worth $30,000, $40,000 a year. They've got room and board. All those things are available to them. They're getting a first-class education. I think that should be enough. They got to give them a stipend, fine. But to basically now be able to buy a player, just basically say, listen, you come to our school, we're going to give you $50,000, or we're going to arrange
Join the meeting.
something for Kleenex. That drives me crazy.
Oh, I had myself muted there. So, Patty asked earlier about being season ticket holder. So you're going to sit with us in the stands. And I think Patty wants to know if you're going to actually sit next to her.
Well, we'll see what kind of tickets they give me when I'm not working for them.
So, okay. So Greg would like to know, what are you going to do after you retire from calling Cal football?
Frankly, I have no idea. I mean, it's hard to kind of make that decision right now. I've always been a great traveler. My wife and I, and often with our kids, have pretty well roamed the world. This past summer, for example, we took a trip with a former local sports writer, Ira Miller, with our wives, and we went from London all the way down to Venice and had a trip. And I love taking trips, and of course, by the nature of what I do, a lot of frequent flyer miles and a lot of hotel points. So I'll probably continue that for a while.
All right, very good. All right, so Roger would like to know, what do you think you will miss most about broadcasting?
Just the thrill of the game, the excitement of being part of it. It's a special treat to know that you're sort of part of the action itself, that people are listening, and that you're able to convey that excitement to them is a great kick. And so I think I'll miss that a lot. Even now, when there are 49er games I've gone to through the years since I left, and I say, oh man, I wish I had that call, or I wish I'd been able to work that game, So I guess that's part of life in general. Things change and you move on. But I think there's no question there'll be days that I'll say, gee, I wish I was doing that.
All right, good. So Brian would like to know, what years did you also do Cal basketball? When did that stop?
When I came back from Colorado, I had been working as the TV and radio play-by-play broadcaster of the Colorado Rockies of the National Hockey League, who went on to become the New Jersey Generals. And I came back because I felt the franchise was not solid and that they would not stay in Colorado. The team that's there now is incredibly successful, but in that era they weren't. And so I was concerned about that. And when the opportunity came up, Mickey Luckoff, who was the station manager at KGO, had offered a couple of times the chance to come back to the Bay Area and do Cal football and basketball. And so the combination was enticing enough that I came back and did that. And I did Cal basketball for 12 years, 79 to 91. But at that point, because I'd been in hockey before, I still had this fascination with the NHL. And so the opportunity to do the Sharks on television for their first couple of years was irresistible. But I realized very quickly I shouldn't have done it because I was biting off too much. I had to give up Cal basketball, and I was still trying to do the 49ers. Cal plus hockey was insane. And so I woke up and made a sensible decision after a couple of years.
All right, great. So Dave would like to know, what do you think of the 4 seconds of delay when you're broadcasting versus watching it on TV?
Drives us crazy. In fact, we constantly, I mean this, every week, we tell KGO to contact stations on the network and do it themselves. You need to match it up with the picture. But there's a very serious but that has ruined all that, okay? The problem is there are now so many different cable services that they don't all have exactly the same delay. So One has a 3-second delay. DirecTV might have a 4.5-second delay. So you go across the spectrum. So they try to get it as close as they can, but you can't satisfy everybody. If there had been only one cable outlet of some, so to speak, satellite outfit, it would be pretty easy. But with so many different ones, it's almost impossible to even it out completely.
Okay. So Steve Eversher would like to know, what is your opinion on the Cal versus UC Berkeley title dilemma?
But yeah, I think they both work. I think Cal is a more logical phrase just for the whole idea of the social side of it, the sports side of it, all sports. You know, somebody plays Cal basketball or is on the Cal track team and all that makes sense. And UC Berkeley is a more formal name. That's all. I don't see why it has to be a big deal, frankly.
Right. And Ellen just would like to wish you enjoyment in your retirement. So the next question, So next question, your signature call is "What a Bonanza!" Like "Whoa, Nelly" from Keith Jackson. Did you ever do TV broadcasting versus radio broadcasting? So I think you kind of answered that one already.
Yeah, I did. I did several years of the North American Soccer League on television. I did the Earthquakes, for example. I did hockey. I was in the NHL for 10 years. And all 10 of those years, I was doing television and radio. Most of the teams I worked with, we did simulcast. So I would be the voice on radio and television. And then I did some basketball. Believe it, most people, I'm sure, don't know this, but I was actually the Warriors backup for Bill King for a while back in the late 70s. And so I've covered a whole bunch of different sports, and that's what's great about the business. I love the fact that I could be involved in so many different aspects of the sporting world.
Yeah. So I'm not going to make you try to answer this one again. Elizabeth also wants to know about your favorite Cal players, but I'm going to pass. I knew you covered that. Ellen would like to know, are you in touch with any of the old players?
Well, of course, Gary Plummer was my partner for 10 years. In fact, we had such an interesting relationship because not only did I broadcast his games when he was at Cal, and he was, of course, on the field in the 82 Laterals, but then he went to the USFL, and I became the broadcaster for the Oakland Invaders. And then he became a 49er, and I was still calling his games. Then he retires, and he becomes my partner on the 49er football games. So a lot of them have had overlapping relationships through the years. There's been some of that. And of course, I've had the great honor. It really is a privilege. I've always said very publicly, the best analysts on radio and television are linebackers and quarterbacks, because they have to see everything. So they have more of a big picture look out on the field. And so you think about it, Mike Pawlowski now, Dave Barr has been a partner. I've had all these guys Lee Groscup was a quarterback, all right? Many people may not remember, but Marv Levy, one of the great coaches in the business, Hall of Famer, all those Super Bowl appearances. Marv was my partner for a while on Cal football. He was a Cal head coach at one point. And so I think those positions tend to lend themselves to be the best analysts.
Lisa would like to know, how did your expression "oh my" come about?
Oh, he's got the wrong expression. That's Dick Enberg.
Oh, okay. Well,
Dick Enberg is "oh my"
before it, but I think it's more not just an expression; it's just that's what is appropriate to come out.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, I'm the "what a bonanza" guy.
You absolutely, absolutely.
Which I got from a friend of mine, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we had when I first moved to the West Coast. I said I started in Los Angeles working for a bank, and one of the guys there, a guy named Mike Henninger, and I got season tickets for the Rams and USC, much to the disgust of my wife that I kept going to all these football games. But it was Mike's phrase. We would go to a game, and he would always yell "what a bonanza" when something dramatic happened on the field. And when I got into broadcasting, for whatever reason, I just picked up that line and started to use it. My first job with the Seals, and just kept it going because I thought it worked and fit the situation.
Right. Hear this. Yeah, I always thought that was yours.
Huh?
So Jim would like to know, what was it like working with Troy Taylor, and could he be a successful OC at Cal?
You know, a lot of people are bringing that subject up in the long term. You know, if our present coach, who I love a lot, I think he's a terrific coach, ever decides to move on or do something else, I think Troy Taylor would be a great fit. He knows the game. He's got an undefeated team right now up in Sacramento. He's an incredibly good guy. He's been a success everywhere he was, starting with high school football over in the Sacramento area. And so I would see that he would probably be a great fit at Berkeley someday.
So Brian, I'd like to know, what's your opinion of the Pac-12 network? What changes does that TV channel need to make?
It needs to, I gotta be careful here because it is so awful. The people that work in it are excellent. The staffs are good, the broadcast crews are good, but you can't have a network that so many people can't see. I mean, in my own house, I cannot watch the Pac-12 network, and I'm not alone. And so they had as you know, there was a commissioner that came in and put that deal together, and it has been a disaster for more than just the reasons that you might think, because everybody doesn't get that network. You have the extra issue of it forced the games to be at awful times. I mean, for 20, 25 years, we almost never played a night game. We always had Saturday afternoon. Pac-12 network, now we're all over the place. This week, for example, we're playing at 8 o'clock at USC. Who doesn't want to be spending an afternoon in Southern California with the sun shining and doing a football game, or in the Rose Bowl on a Saturday afternoon, or up in Oregon with the beautiful campus and the trees turning colors? The whole idea of all this night football, and even worse to the night football, is the fact that you don't even know when it's going to be until it's 2 weeks before the game. And I guarantee you it's affected attendance all over the West Coast over the years now.
Well, Joe, if you were making these comments about night games and not knowing ahead of time, if you're saying that here to get an argument for somebody, you're not going to get it. I can guarantee you that. We've been screaming about that for years. As you know, was it for Washington? Was it a couple of weeks ago as we sat in the stands cold and
absolutely,
and yeah, and driving back to Sacramento and getting home at 1 a.m. Yeah.
Well, maybe the new contract, which is probably still about a year or two away, will solve that problem. We hope so.
Let's hope so. So Richard has an interesting question. Richard Flyer, do you have any interest in making a documentary about broadcasters in college sports?
Would I be interested?
Yeah. Do you have any interest in making it? Yeah, a documentary.
No, honestly, actually, I don't. I'll tell you. No, I mean, I pay a lot of attention to other people who do this. And from the first day I got interested in doing it, I've paid very close attention to guys around the country to say, oh, I like the way he does that, or I don't know if I'd do it that way. Or, for example, I grew up in Chicago, and so we had really some outstanding announcers led by a guy named Jack Quinlan, who did the Cubs when I was young. Jack Brickhouse, who was the voice of the Bears and the Cubs and the White Sox for many years. And so you take little things from everybody. Dick Enberg, for all his talent. There's so many guys that have to go down the whole list, would take forever, of guys that I've stolen from because I think what they did was something I should use.
So Greg would like to know, do you think the Pac-12 will survive, assuming that UCLA as well as USC leave in 2024?
Well, they might survive if UCLA and USC leave, but they're going to look like a very different product. And there is the danger, if both of those schools leave, what then keeps Oregon, our basic powerhouse these days, from leaving? And what happens to schools like Washington State and Oregon State, which have good programs and all that, but they're in obscure locations. They're not going to get you big ratings, even if they win. And so all those things start adding up to possibly causing a lot of trouble down the road here in the next few years. So let's hope it doesn't turn out that way. I will be optimistic until I can't be.
David would like to know, will Joe Cap ever get to drink tequila again?
I wish. I'll buy it for him. If people don't know, he always said he won't drink tequila until the Bears get back to the Rose Bowl. And so let's keep that opportunity out there for him.
Ellen has a personal question. How long have you been married?
Geez, I better get this right. 56 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 56 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Richard-
And as far as my wife's concerned, she's probably had 3 good years with me, you know?
Right. Richard, also like to know, other than not giving money to college players, what changes would you make to make college changes to college football to make it better?
You know, I think that the money issue is a kind of a separate thing, and I do think I see no problem at all. For example, giving them, what the famous, I guess the word is stipend. Besides getting because it does bother me over the years that I've known college players who literally couldn't go home for Thanksgiving because they couldn't afford it. You know, they were on campus and they just couldn't help. So if you want to take care of them that way and give them an allowance, that sort of thing. But beyond that, I just don't think it should turn into a big money deal for a college player, because I said I think that the benefits of a university education and all the things that go with that are pretty solid in themselves. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, Jeff Tedford, I remember him saying one time pretty much the same thing, that he wished that we just be able to give players a little stipend of some sort, because he said it broke his heart when he would see a player that couldn't afford to go out and buy himself a hamburger.
Exactly. And sadly, but that was actually true. Yeah.
Yeah. For brevity, I'm going to kind of skip some of the comments and just keep going to questions. Let's see, what is your favorite Cal band song?
Well, let's see. That's a good question, because I tend to like all of them and I'll sing along with them. So rather than pick out a favorite, I'll just say I like whenever the Cal band performs, I'm there.
Yeah, I think we're all with you on that one. Who are your top 5 coaches? David Shaw would like to know, who are your top 5 coaches during your broadcast era?
Let's see. Well, we got to start with Mike White, because he gave me the opportunity to really learn the college game. Mike was my first coach at Cal, and when I got the job, Cal was practicing at St. Mary's in Moraga, and so I was a raw rookie. The only football I had in my background was 1 year of junior college football in the south side of Chicago, and so Mike was incredibly valuable to me in letting me be in meetings, understand why they do this, that, or something else. And so that was a tremendous advantage for me. So Steve Mariucci and I were pals for a very long time, not only at Cal, he was also an Oakland Invader assistant coach. He became the head coach of the 49ers. I think a great guy. And frankly, when they made the coaching change, or when we lost a coach that frankly should have been with us for life, Mariucci went to the worst athletic director in school history. I won't even mention his name. He only had the job for about 2 years, and said, if we're going to lose Bruce Snyder, I would like the head coaching job. I'd like to be a candidate. And the guy says to him right away, well, you're not a candidate. Just like that. And so Steve had a good run with the 49ers. He was good in his year with Cal. He took us to a bowl game. And so he's been one of my favorite people. And there are others. I mean, I've had no problem. Keith Gilbertson, who didn't have a great deal of success at Cal, and I remained close over the years and kept in touch. And there really hasn't been I can't tell you a coach at Cal that I would say was somebody that, gee, I wish he'd leave. You know, I've never had that kind of program. I had last time we went over to BYU, I had lunch with Tom Homo, who never had any success at Cal, but still is a great human being. So that's all part of it.
Another question from Dave: does the university still get fined $25,000 for storming the field?
I didn't. Is that what I didn't know? Is that the case now?
Yeah. Well, he's one of it still. I think that I know that there was a fine for it. I didn't know it was that much, and
I didn't either. No.
Yeah.
I think they put that in because there've been a couple of incidents, particularly down south, where the everybody practically in the stands went out in the field. And they're trying to control it, and so I know they put a fine in. I didn't realize how much is involved though.
Okay. Let's see. So, and just a comment from Wanda and Mark Guest. that the play was her freshman year, and you're the only announcer they've known. So thanks for the memories. We'll
Thank
truly
you.
miss
That's great.
Let's see, and I think, is this all the? I think that's anybody have any other questions for Joe? Yeah, Les, go ahead and come off mute. Hang on, Les, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Yep, we can see that you're muted. You need to hit a button. There you go.
He's working at it. Yeah, it should be at the bottom of this. Oh, so while Les is working on that, Dave wants you to do your Bank of the West bear growl.
What is this?
Dave wants to say, it says, do your Bank of the West Cal bear growl.
I didn't know I had one.
I I'm glad we're recording this. Les, maybe if you could put the question in chat. Yes, he's having a little trouble. Any other questions while Les is working on that?
Hey, Joe, do you, it seems like obviously this is turning out to be a very difficult football season. Do you, how do you think the rest of the season looks like in terms of maybe still turning this around, especially offensively?
Well, we got some real issues, and a lot of it, I think the biggest issue, frankly, is we lost all the injured players to the same place, losing so many offensive linemen,
Right.
including a couple that were rated among the top 10 in the whole conference,
Yeah.
has really hurt the team. And you don't want to put the blame on the guys that replaced them, because it's a hard job to fill. But I do think that that has been a big issue for us. Or without that kind of depth and talent, it has affected the ability of the team to do what they should be able to do. Because I think we've got terrific running backs. I think we got great wide receivers. We have all sorts of good players on defense, and it's just we lost some key players, and we're paying for it.
Yeah, it seems like our depth is always pretty thin every year, right?
I think that's a Cal historic problem. Again, I think it has to do with the university and how tough it is to get players in here.
Right. Goes back to what you said earlier. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, it looks like Les was able to get unmuted there. So Les, what's your question?
My question, Joe, I met you at O'Hare Airport before the Notre Dame game, but speaking of the Notre Dame game, Sports Illustrated even said there were 4 penalties that hurt Cal.
Oh, it was awful.
And that one that was the offside that, they had picked.
There wasn't there. There was no offside.
There was no offside.
It was really sad because we had a chance to win that game. If we win that game, it changes everything about our season right now. It puts us in position to have a winning record, sneak into a bowl game somewhere. All those things were on the line. And even the supervisor of officials who was on scene at Notre Dame told everybody in the press box there was no penalty. They should never have been able to get that kick done again. What are you going to do? It happens.
One other question. I think you bleed blue and gold as much as Joe Cap, but you, like philosophy, as much as it's evident that you're Cal Bears. How do you stay kind of neutral as far as not, showing that?
Repeat that again.
How do you be kind of objective and not try to be so, like Bear fans?
Oh, okay. Well, I think if you're doing the job right, you have to do that. I have no problem cheering for the Bears or the 49ers or the Sharks or anybody else I ever worked for, but I am not being a professional in my business if I don't also tell you when they're screwing up. You need to be honest and say, they're not doing this well, they're not doing that well, but gee, they could really use some help at this position. If you don't do that, I think you lose credibility with the audience. And I don't want to ever be in that position.
Right. Roger, I think at the next question, we'll take a couple of more and go from there. So Roger.
Thanks, Gary. Joe, and we all say Joe because we feel like we know you. especially after all these years. You have made it a habit in post-game interviews with players to typically to ask them about what they're doing academically, and for the seniors, what they're thinking about doing next after they graduate or leave Cal. I'm curious whether that's something that along the line you decided it was important from your point of view to include in those interviews to let the audience know that there's more than just a football player you're talking to, or whether that just is something you kind of evolved into over time, and why you think it's important.
Well, yeah, it was done very specifically because I do want to recognize the fact these are student athletes. And I think it is important to point out the fact that in addition to the long hours they put in practicing for football and the beating they take on Saturday afternoon, they are also athlete students. And so therefore they're doing a tough thing here, working both sides of the street. And so I want to respect the fact that they're also succeeding academically at one of the top universities literally in the world. And so I never hesitate to point out that whoever scored the winning touchdown, by the way, has also got a 3.8 average in biology or something, I think it's important.
So just a couple more questions here. There's one that I especially love, but first one, have you heard the call to play by the Stanford play-by-play announcer, Barry Tompkins, on the TV broadcast?
The jury spared him.
Yes, I did, and no comment.
Okay.
He's a pal. There's no way I'll be negative.
Okay, here's this one question that I think we all want to know the answer to. Will there be a Joe Starkey bobblehead day?
I would doubt it.
I wouldn't.
It's the only I can remember when I was doing Rocky hockey. They actually had a night where they had a little statuette where they had a Colorado Rockies hockey player with Starkey on the back, and they handed that out to the fans. But yeah, a bobblehead for the announcer, that sounds like it's going a little too far. Take care of the players and the coaches.
All right. And the mascot, we've got Oski bobbleheads.
Oh, yeah, we're all for that.
Yep. All right, and take one more question here from Jim. Is it uncomfortable to try and interview Justin Wilcox after the games? He doesn't ever seem too happy.
Well, yeah, if you're when you have a coach after a loss, there's no reason they should be happy. And so you try to go through that fine line of supporting him, but also asking the questions that needed to be asked about why this didn't work or why that didn't work, and where are you and what do you have to do to straighten this out? Because that's just part of the deal. If you're going to be a coach, you got to take the heat along with the sunlight.
All right. And let's say if I was going to take one more, I think, oh yeah, just the one last question that we have here is, where did it go? I just lost it. Yeah, what do you think of the Cal Cannon moving from the days on the field to the hill? And what do you think of the Tightwad Hill crowd?
Well, I think it's kind of fun that they can do that. We don't hear the cannon, by the way, nearly enough. We're not getting nearly enough touchdowns to make enough noise. I think, in fact, what was the stat I had was that our touchdown totals, we only have 22 touchdowns on the season. USC has 40. So that's something to worry about when we go play football on Saturday. But I think the cannon's a nice touch. I think it's something special. It's nice that so many different schools have things like that. I mean, the Buffalo in Colorado, and a lot of schools have the dog at Georgia, the bulldog at Georgia. All those are fun, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think Georgia's up to what, UGA 7 or UGA 8 now?
Yeah, they're about 7 or 8, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all the questions we have. Joe, we cannot thank you enough for being here with us tonight. I know you had a lot of questions, and we so much appreciate you taking the time for us to talk to us and answer our questions. You know, with that, we only have a few more games to hear you broadcast, and I know that Cal football is just not going to be the same without you in the booth. But as much as we know we're going to miss you, we wish you all the best, a long and healthy and happy and exciting retirement, and we thank you for is it 47 years?
48.
48 years of Cal football, and being in the booth. And we thank you especially for that afternoon in 1982 that we will all remember. And again, we wish you the best of luck. I know that there's all kinds of stuff going on in chat now for you, great wishes and thanks. And I see also an awful lot of people have gone off mute. So I think as I close things out here, there is going to be.
Well, thanks to everybody. I appreciate all the comments and notes and all that. Everything you do. It's been an honor to have the job.
So, Joe, again, thank you for being here. Yeah, a great round of applause, a huge Go Bears, and we're going to miss you. And feel free to join us. You've got my email. Free to join us anytime.
Thank you.
So with that,
all right, let's
Joe,
have a big day at Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Go Bears! Go Bears!
Go Bears!
Go Bears!
Go Joe!
Bye.
Go Bears!
How do I send?
Even the canines are oh yeah, Joe, one last question here. We normally ask this question for the media people that come and tell us about whoever we're playing, but since we don't have one tonight, we're going to ask you, what is your score prediction for Saturday?
Well, I do think I've been doing most of my homework, and USC does have some weaknesses on defense. They're only 8th in the conference in defense. So I do think they're vulnerable if we can give our quarterback and Ott enough time to do what they do. Because we got a good quarterback, we got some really good receivers, and if Ott can get the opportunities that he had early in the season, we can put some points on the board. But frankly, realistically, it would be an upset if we were to beat USC. I think right now they're an incredibly deep team, and because they would be able to bring in so many players from so many other places, they are loaded. So if we can pull out the upset, it would be a classic. If we keep it close, might be the best we can hope for, but we'll take it.
We're okay with upsets.
Yes, we're big on them. Yeah, we're usually when we win, it's
happened before. Don't give up.
Good. All right. Again, Joe, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. We had a great crowd, a really good turnout. Susie, thank you for being here as well. And with that, we'll see you all next week. Be watching, I know we've got a good reservation or good registrations already for next week with Tyler Bridges and Kevin and Gary. And be watching for a venue for Dave Lambros. So with that, we'll see you all next week. And
Go Bears! Go Bears!
Go Bears!
Go on,
Thanks,
Bears!
Bears!
Go Bears!
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. and Thanks, Gary.
For all the years.
Hi, Ellen.
Somebody said bye to Ellen.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Nice job, Gary.
Thank Greg.
Okay. I'm sitting.
Go Bears.